Hello, and welcome to the Physiology of Singing, singing, yeah. Alrighty. So, mask resonance. Woo! What a topic, right? You hear about it a lot. I think it's a very prominent term, especially in musical theater and belt. Probably more so than classical nowadays, maybe? I don't know. It probably depends. Because it definitely was a big term in the classical world for a while there, but then I've also met a lot of voice teachers that consider it a bit of a dirty term now, like it's been tainted. And part of that is because when you talk about mask resonance, there can be a danger of confusing it with nasal resonance. And that can be a danger for both a inexperienced voice teacher who can't quite tell the difference, like acoustically speaking, like they can't perceive the difference between something really nasal and actual mask resonance. Also, it can get confusing for a young singer, very confusing for someone somewhat early in their training. Quite frankly, I knew classically trained tenors who still found it very confusing in their like graduate degree for voice. So, yeah, it's a muddy area. So let's try to unpack it a little bit, okay? So part one to this is essentially the velopharyngeal function, but like soft palate, essentially. My video titled that, so I recommend watching that a little bit, just about daily stuff about the soft palate, because that is essentially what either opens or closes the velopharyngeal port. So that's what's either that's what either allows. That's great. That's what allows, if it's lowered, then airflow and acoustic energy is going through the nasal cavities. And if it's elevated, if that velopharyngeal area is closed, velopharyngeal port is closed, then the bulk of the acoustic energy is coming out the oral cavity, coming out the lips, the mouth, okay? Now, when you're singing words, okay, your soft palate is going to have to bob up and down a fair amount anyway, because you're going to have, inevitably, you're going to have some kind of nasal consonant somewhere along the line that you're going to have to lower your soft palate for, just to make the nasal consonant. But let's unpack a little bit of this, like, nasal resonance business, okay? So in the world of speech pathology, a lot of times we talk about nasality, like nasal resonance, under the terms of hypernasality or hyponasality. So too much nasal energy, acoustic nasal energy, or too little, hyponasality. It is not necessarily a one-to-one relationship with soft palate function, okay? Some people can have a fair amount of hypernasality in their voice or in the vocal quality that they put out, and they might have a perfectly elevated, soft palate. They're able to close off their velopharyngeal port just fine. They just happen to have a bit of extra nasality in there, okay? So in the voice world, a lot of times hypernasality is thought of as that pingy, ringy, like kind of almost mask resonance thing, okay? Personally, I like to think of those things as a bit different. So I might be a little woo about that, but I like to think of it as a little different because I think mask resonance, when we talk about that, that's that buzzy vibration that voice teachers, coaches, sometimes vocal therapists will encourage people to feel either in their sinus cavities around here or up in their, forehead area up here. So like kind of around here, like where you would put a mask on if you're going to a masquerade ball. That maybe is what they talk about in terms of mask resonance. And it's something that you find in old treatises on training voice, back in Mozart's day and stuff. You find reference to this like extra resonance in this area, okay, as being an important part of the classical sound. And it's also considered an important part of belt sound nowadays as well, okay? You got to put it in the mask, right? So I'm going to try to unpack that a little bit. I don't have a lot of visuals for this, so this might get kind of confusing, but okay. So, remember Acoustics 101, okay? I did some videos on acoustics. If you would like to go review, now would be a good time, but Acoustics 101, smaller spaces will resonate at higher frequencies, right? So, which is instinctual, honestly, to musicians, because like a ukulele is higher than a guitar, right? A cello versus a violin, you know, even if they're hitting the exact same note, it's like the cello's bigger, it sounds different, okay? Because it's resonating lower frequencies, okay? Resonance means like adding energy to those frequencies, okay? It's standing waves are created, you have more amplitude in those frequencies, and so they're essentially the stuff you hear is resonance, okay? In the physical, like physics world, acoustics world, okay? So your nasal cavities have very small air spaces. In a lot of like the pictures like I showed in the video before, that side view, it looks like it's big, but it's actually very small. If you've ever seen a video of someone passing a flexible endoscope through the nose, because that's the one that goes through the nose, or if you yourself have ever attempted to pass a flexible endoscope through the nose, you will see, you get a feeling for exactly how small the air spaces are there. Because once that camera goes and gets into the throat area, you're like, yeah, I got all the space to work with. But going through the nose, it's like, oh, I don't want to hurt this person going through the nose. It's like making a really tight little turn, you know. Like you gotta keep it right in place. Well, and some people are just really awesome at it. I'm just not that awesome at it yet, so there you go. Anyways, gets better, you know, gets easier to maneuver as you go along. But so the nasal cavities are pretty tiny, so they're going to resonate higher frequencies, right? But the thing about nasal, like acoustics going through the nasal, so if you have hypernasality, if you got too much acoustic energy going through the nose, yeah, you're going to have a boost in higher frequencies, which is going to give you that, you know, it's like you're talking like, you know, Fran Drescher kind of, right? Like that really hypernasal speech that is common among certain dialects, right? I'm not the best at accents, so forgive me. It's probably not the best. But you have that hypernasal. But if you have a lot going through, like if you're producing a nasal consonant, like an excuse me. So one of the things nasal consonants have are something called a nasal murmur. Sometimes it's called antiformants. You can look that up. It is an area in the low frequencies where the low frequencies have been really dampened out because it's such a small space, okay? So the low frequencies just can't pass through that tiny space. They can't be resonated, so they get dampened out. So you have this loss of energy in the low frequencies. So having hypernasal singing is sometimes great if you're like a character actor, character actress, if you want to sound, you know, like you want to sound kind of witchy, you know, like, yeah, okay? It can be nice to have that hypernasality in certain areas of theater. In opera, it's usually not considered great unless you're doing like The Witch and Hansel and Gretel. You might want to add a little hypernasality there. But it's not the kind of sound you want to have all the time in your singing because you want some of that oscuro, you want some of that dark quality, and you're not going to get that if you have a lot of hypernasality. To contrast that with mass resonance, what folks call mass resonance, that buzziness that you feel. Okay, so hold on to your hats, folks. Hopefully this helps. But thing about resonance and the fact that sound waves are actual physical things, right? Remember? It's actual physical, like the sound waves, the molecules, they're moving. Okay, there's a change in air pressure, there's compression, rarefaction, they're going back and forth, okay? All right, so those air molecules are gonna bump up against whatever the heck they touch, okay? So that includes your tissues, like your skin tissue, your epithelial tissue. It also includes your bone structure, okay? So your skull, structures in your skull, the tiny little spaces, tiny little bones that are up in here, tiny little areas like sinus cavities that are up in here. All those areas, those sound waves, if they're high enough and if they match the resonant frequency of that tiny space is going to get excited. The air molecules within that space will start to bounce around too, and they will bump up against the bone structure, and you will feel that buzz as an actual physical, like, ooh, it feels like my bones are really like vibrating around. You can also feel this at your mouth if you're humming. You should be able to touch the corners of your mouth and feel a bit of a vibration through the skin, okay? So even though a bulk of the acoustic energy is going out the nose, there is some that's being transferred to that tissue and making that tissue bounce around a bit. It's vibrating. And then you can play with that and see if you can move that buzzy feeling all the way up to here or up to here. Ooh, I'm getting it very strong up there right now. So, okay. And if you have a little bit of a, like, if you have stuffy sinuses, you'll just be like, woo, at the end, which I always am. Like, for some reason, I always am a little stuffy. But, allergies, probably. It's probably the reason. Okay, so, all right, so that's mask resonance. Mask resonance, what people are really talking about is that sympathetic resonance where the bone structure is set into vibration because the higher frequency sound waves have so much energy that they're exciting those cavities, those tiny little spaces that actually match the resonant frequency of those harmonics. So for a lot of singers, that's the singer's formant. For a lot of singers, it's that critical high energy band of 3,000 to about 5,000 hertz. That's going to set that stuff into vibration. So it's not the same thing as hypernasality, okay? It's not this, even though this sounds really high and it has that kind of sound. And it might be a voice I would want to use if I was being a character that, you know, that voice would be appropriate for. But if I just want to sing like a ballad, or if I want to sing an aria, an opera, you know, if I want that oscuro in my sound. Not a lot of oscuro in this sound, right? It's not a lot of oscuro when you're doing the hypernasal voice. It sounds really, really, like, annoyingly twangy, right? It's, like, annoyingly high-pitched. Like, there's a little too much high pitch going on. So you can have that resonance, but personally, I don't feel it up here. Like, I don't get vibration up there when I'm doing super hypernasal. I get it mostly right in my nose. I feel the vibration right here. So if I'm talking really hypernasal, I can feel a lot of vibration in my nose right now. Versus, let me reset a little bit. Trying to talk a little more where the vibration is up near my forehead, trying to keep that buzz going way up here, thinking of the sound coming up through my forehead, creates a completely different sound, and it carries a lot. I hear it echoing in the room, actually, that I'm in right now. I hear it echoing back to me. It's a very viable voice for me to use on the stage. It's a great way to project my voice, and it's precisely the type of resonance that I would be looking for as an opera singer, as an indication that I'm able to cut through the orchestra to the audience. So that extra little sensation up here, for me, it's kind of up here. It depends on where you are, what kind of voice you are, and all kinds of other stuff. But that is going to be the indication that I have that chiaro to cut with, even if I'm hearing a lot of oscuro inside my head. And I am really out of practice operatically, like ridiculously. I have not sung operatically since, okay, probably like 3 months, okay? Just to let you guys know. But I will attempt something for you. Ha! Yay! All right, so if I start at kind of a nope. I'm trying to keep it right there. I'm trying to keep it coming through my forehead and just keep it going through my forehead. Just so I can feel where I'm getting, okay? Like, am I finding that released throat, and am I finding that buzzy feeling with the operatic voice, which I would need to practice with a little more because I'm way out of practice, so like I can't quite find it right now. I'd have to play around to find it. So maybe I'll do a video if you want to see me play around to try to find it. I can do a video on that. But yeah, so that is what the mask resonance is. And it's the same thing if I wanted to build up there, if I'm working on a high note when I build. I want to keep it coming that way. Because I don't want to go, if I'm working on a high note when I build. That's going straight through the nose, right? That's not a very desired sound. But if I want to do a high note when I build, and who knows what key I'm in, I don't even know. Yeah. Okay. I don't know where I was. But that's the idea. It's the same mask resonance. I'm hearing the oscuro quality. I have a little more of a depth to the voice. Oh, yeah, yeah. Depth to the voice from my more relaxed, easy vocal production. Yeah. But I'm not hypernasal. I'm not putting it all through my nose so that I only get that really high pitch. Ooh. It sounds really like, ah, inside my head. So that's a little bit of those differences. Hypernasal is, yeah, you got some really great chiaro, like you got that really sharp high pitch, but that's about all you have in your sound. Chiaroscuro balance is easy throat, lots of pharyngeal space, everything's relaxed, but you also can feel that sympathetic resonance of those tiny structures vibrating. Now, a total side note to this, hopefully that helped clarify things a little bit, but the other side note to this is that sympathetic resonance might not be there throughout your entire vocal range, okay? So, for instance, for me, when I did sing classically, I was a coloratura soprano, go super high, crazy high notes. There is a certain range where I do not feel that anymore, and my voice sounds really distant in my head. I had a voice teacher say it's almost like you're singing through a cave, and it's like the sound starts to go out the back of your head almost to a point, like you go up. Like that kind of stuff, where it's high and then it comes back down. But it's like, it sounds really small in my head, and I do not feel resonance in my mask, in my face, in that area of my face. Partly because my fundamental frequency has probably gotten so high that any harmonics that are happening up there, I'm basically above probably the range where I'm going to really get a lot of that strength there, okay? So I'm not going to get that extra boost of bone vibration, essentially. So then if I really want to know if it feels easy in my throat, then I know I'm kind of on the right track with those high notes. I can't depend on mask resonance when I go really high in my voice. And I think for a lot of voice types that's true. When you get to the extremities of your range, whether you're really low, if you're a really low voice, or you're going really high in your voice, that's where the perception of like what you hear in your head versus what you feel can really be very different, can really be weird to you. Maybe I'll do a super brief video to just explain that a little bit, but I might as well just bust it out here. Part of that is your ear actually can hear through bone conduction. So your inner ear, this is the outer, okay, this is the pinna, and then through there's an ear canal that's all air conduction. Then you have the middle ear with all those little bones, right? The malleus, the incus, and the stapes. What do people call it? The like anvil, the foot, the whatever. Anyway. I can't remember that. My husband knows that version of it, and I'm like, I only learned the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Like, I know the actual anatomical terms. I don't know the foot, the hammer foot and anvil, or anvil foot, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so that stuff transfers the energy into the fluid of the inner ear. Your inner ear is fluid, okay? And to get the acoustic signal into your brain, you have these little fibers, these little cilia in your inner ear that move when the fluid moves, okay? Bone conduction can make that fluid move just as much as air conduction can. So when you hear yourself talking in your own voice range, 9 times out of 10, right, you hear yourself on a recording and you think, I sound like that? Really? That's what I sound like? What? It's probably because you're getting an extra boost of bone conduction when you talk. That for me, I hear my voice is lower in my head than when I hear recordings of myself. I hear darker frequencies, like lower harmonics are getting excited by probably the structure of my skull, okay? It's the larger bone structures that are exciting those lower frequencies, and that's what I hear. I get like a boost of them, and I hear that in my voice much more when I'm in my speaking range. When I get way above, and I get way up high in my voice, I don't get that boost of the low anymore. And I might not even really get a boost of the high. I might only hear some high. And so my voice sounds thin, it sounds small, it sounds distant. And then when I hear a recording of it, or I hear an echo come back, I think, holy crap, that was my voice? Are you kidding me? So that's that trick of hearing yourself. It's that bone conduction, part of that mask resonance, really, partly, that helps you hear yourself so differently on recording versus inside your own head, and it gets really confusing. But anyway, if you want more details on that topic, let me know, because I can definitely talk more about that. Okay, this is already a bit long. I will stop now, and hopefully this helps a little bit distinguish mask resonance from hypernasality, because I feel like it's a pretty important distinguishing point for a lot of singers, and especially voice teachers. It's important to make that distinction. If you're a new voice teacher, make that distinction with your students as well. It's important to draw that line and to make it very clear that there's a difference between the two things. All right? Bye, folks. See you later.